Since we were living so far apart, we would communicate mainly through emails, and maybe we would exchange several YouTube videos and several links. And when you get an email from someone, you can see the title of the email, and maybe between me and my father would be anything at all, like for example a cat eating a cake or a dog falling over and something. But then in the first months of 2020, I started seeing that the titles of these emails progressively started getting a little more focused on health. And I started reading titles such as "Stop Eating Salad."
Bart, how did you find Carnivore?
Carnivore. All right. So it all started about 3 years ago. I was already living in Japan, and I'm from northern Italy, by the way. And I was living in Japan by myself, and my father was home in Italy, living with the whole family. And so yeah, carnivore really entered my family through him. Originally, it was my father who kind of started doing the research, or basically watching YouTube videos. As you might know, the coronavirus hit Italy pretty hard in the first month of 2020. And my father, who had been struggling with the serious and a bit maybe less serious health conditions, was watching a lot of YouTube videos, I guess, in the during the lockdown. Um, and yeah, as a side, also he had yeah. So 2020 was when Corona came to Italy, and 2 years early, which is yeah 2018. My grandfather, i.e., his own father, had passed after struggling with diabetes and cancer and other things for multiple decades, pretty much. So yeah, so my father being the person who would check on my grandfather, and maybe help him figure out what he had to do with the medicines, and what how to interpret the doctor's words and stuff. He was already very accustomed with the medical speak, and pharmaceutical. He had been actually a representative for Lilly, which is a company that developed Prozac way back in the days. So yeah, he's been in the medical, well, pharmaceutical, maybe I should say, environment for quite a while. Um, so what happened was, since we were living so far apart, we would communicate mainly through emails, and maybe we would exchange several YouTube videos and several links. And when you get an email from someone, you can see the title of the email, and maybe between me and my father would be anything at all, like for example a cat eating a cake or a dog falling over and something. But then in the first months of 2020, I started seeing that the titles of these emails progressively started getting a little more focused on health. And I started reading titles such as "Stop Eating Salad" or "No More Pizza," something like that. So I thought, okay, the old man must have gone nuts or something. And well, but so that's the first impression that I got, right? And then I actually started watching these videos, and um, also talking to him over the phone, of course. And he would tell me about how his health overall was improving just by cutting the just by cutting the carbohydrates. Really, the carnivore was still not part of the conversation. And the more I the more we talked about it, the more I was able to connecting dots. Really, so maybe we should go a little bit, you know, do a little bit of a back, what's it called, flashback, and go a bit further back in time. So as I said, I'm from Italy, and if you grew up in Italy, you would pretty much eat a Western diet. Although I'm gonna say that, after having compared it with the diet that the average Englishman or the average Australian or the average American consumes, I would say that even though it's a mixed diet that mixes carbohydrates and fat and protein in this mix, that's, we as carnivore know that is not really the best thing for your health. I would say that the Italian version is probably maybe the less unhealthy version of the mixed diet, as there's a great focus on ingredients. And so, for example, if you have, I'm willing to bet anything at all that if you have like a tomato pasta in Italy, it's going to be a lot less unhealthy, less toxic than maybe a tomato pasta that you can have in Canada. No offense for Canada, but I guess maybe the quality of the ingredients would be better. There would be less processed stuff. So, and also as Italians in general, we are, we grow up with this myth of the Mediterranean diet. So we have this overconfidence that we are the, healthiest countries in the world, the healthiest diet in the world. So we don't have anything to worry about, and everyone should only learn from us. These kind of things. And there are some very very vague, not vague, but not too significant in my opinion data. For example, that the very famous one that says that Italy has one of the highest, longest life expectancies in the world, together with Japan and stuff like that, which in my opinion is not enough, because we know that health expectancy, sorry, life expectancy is not really the same as health expectancies, and there are two factors that should be taken together into consideration. Uh, you know, my own grandfather that I was talking about earlier, he developed type 2 diabetes and cancer in the early 2000s, only to pass away in 2018. So that's literally almost 20 years of taking medicine and going back and forth from the hospital. Not to mention the very last years that were just a nightmare, to be honest. So I would say transitioning from a standard diet to keto in Italy is not that, I would say not all people would find it very urgent, because in general, people in Italy tend to have a better health than maybe if compared to some other parts of the Western world. And to be honest, the Italian, I don't know if you've ever been there, but Italian food in general is really delicious. So it's not easy to give up on those foods. Not because they're necessarily very addictive, and well, as carbohydrates, I'm sure they are, but yeah, they're not the really processed junk that like people from the Anglosphere would say, "Oh, I can't believe I was eating that stuff, and now I'm over that." Like they're talking about a drug. Like for us, it's a bit different, right? So um, myself specifically, I never had a serious health condition. I never had major life-threatening uh, disease or anything. Although I'm gonna say that when I was a child, until maybe, yeah, I would say maybe well, actually, until I started the keto diet, but my my general health was always a bit feeble in terms of, for example, coughs and runny nose and sore throat. Since ever since I can remember, when I was maybe a child. Well, when I was a child, actually, I had asthma and a couple of episodes of pneumonia, sorry, and bronchitis. Uh, but that was when I was really, really small. Uh, and then throughout my teenage years until, yeah, mid 20s, my major concern was always this kind of mild, optimal uh, health, where I was always, for example, having a cold, having a sore throat, uh, runny nose. I would never leave the house without a pack of tissues in my pocket, for example, because I was always panicked about blowing my nose and stuff. Um, that created that created some troubles when sleeping too. Uh, Also socially, it's not really ideal if you're constantly blowing your nose, especially in Japan, as you know. It's not really good etiquette. Um, so yeah, this keto thing was much more important, much more urgent for my father, who was very afraid that he would be next in line after my grandfather developing diabetes, developing cancer. My father specifically also was overweight, uh, ever since I can remember. He had hypertension, or at least so he claimed. He had terrible joint problems. He couldn't, for example, sit down. Maybe you know the word seiza, which is the Japanese way of sitting down. My father and I have been practicing martial arts for many years, kendo specifically. And in kendo, you have to sit down on the seiza position, which is like crouching on your knees. And for him, that position was just a no zone over, you know ever since he turned 50. And that was all these things that I'm talking about were just gone as soon as, well, not as soon as, but after a few months, after starting the keto diet for my father. Uh, so for me, it was more like, okay, let's give it a go and see what happens. And the first thing that I did was reducing the number of meals. uh, I never really ate breakfast in my life. For me, breakfast was always kind of a chore, something that you need to do and you must do, and something that in our cultural sensibility is something that is like the most important meal of the day. And if you forget to eat it, you're gonna starve somehow around 11 11 a.m. So, but I never really understood why. Since I was a kid, I would wake up very late for school, and just rush to school without eating anything, and I was just fine for the entire morning. So I never really bought into that. So, and whenever I really pushed myself to have breakfast, like, okay, let's do this, uh, it wasn't it wasn't better at all. It wasn't any better by any measure. Um, I would always have lunch. So that lunch was really the thing that I cut out of my life. And that was already a major improvement, as it it helped boost the productivity and the well-being overall. And I should say that in Italian we have this word that is abbiocco. You probably never. So abbiocco is a very strange word because it only means one thing and one thing only, and that means the the feeling of sleepiness that you get after lunch. It doesn't. So I believe in English is something like food coma, or something like that. And food coma at least is like a compound word. It's like food means food and coma means coma. You put them together. But abbiocco means just nothing else at all. It's really like the sense of sleepiness that you get after lunch. That's it. There's means nothing else at all. So for us, it was always, for me and my family in general, me and my brother who would go have lunch at my grandmother's place, was always like like the curse, the the worst part of the day, where you just have lunch and then you lose consciousness on the sofa for 2 or 3 hours and you're not able to do anything at all. So yeah, cutting out the lunch was, the motivation was mainly to get rid of this abioko thing, and that just worked perfectly. And that was mid 2020, I would say. um, then so keto was the first step. So I was still eating vegetables, still eating fruit, still eating occasionally some rice, as you know, when you live in Japan. But yeah, mostly the main focus of my meal would be meat and eggs. And so carnivore maybe came to, started being a thing, maybe I would say a year ago. or maybe 8 months ago, and I haven't noticed a dramatic change from carnivore to keto. But I have to say that so my carnivore, for example, now looks like um, a mix of meat, eggs, and some dairy. And what one thing that I've noticed is that when I restrict everything to meat only, is already a lot better than meat, eggs, and dairy. So yeah, that's I would say the major shift. Even though I'm not sure I would ever be able to just eat meat, but for me the major shift was more between is more between only meat, so from eggs and cheese to meat, and meat to meat, than from keto to carnivore. So I believe, you know, as the title, as my name I suggest, I'm a huge fan of Professor K, and I was watching your interview with him today, and he was saying 100% carnivore is 100% better than 95% carnivore, and I believe that's really, really, really true. Like there are sometimes, like the more extreme you go, um, doing a little step towards just that could really make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So going into carnivore about 8 months ago, did you notice any changes? Was there like a weight change, muscle gain, energy lift, anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was never really fat. I never really had a weight issue, uh, but I was also never a fan of going, weighing myself on the scale. Um, the I noticed a change mainly from the feedback of other people, and everyone would tell me, for example, "Oh, you lost so much weight. Are you okay?" And I would say, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'm very okay. I'm as okay as I never felt, actually." And yeah, so I think I lost some weight over these months. I think I actually came back to the weight that I had when I was maybe 14 years old, which is a yeah, exactly, which is a common thing that I hear from people who shift to carnivore and keto, and they always say, like, I went back to when I was 20 to when I was 15. Like it's a major, it's like connecting back to closing a circle and going back to a time where maybe someone is young, so whatever they eat doesn't really matter, they will always be healthy, and then things start to go to spiral downwards as when they start being in their late 20s, early 30s. And this thing, the thing that this keto carnivore diet seems to do is that it it brings people back, 20 years, 30 years, like a time machine, and that's really the most amazing thing for me. Yeah, so that's for the weight. For the energy, yeah, for sure. Like getting rid of that abioko that I was talking about was the major thing. Like before this diet, my day would be split in half. Basically, it's the morning, and then and the morning is the time of the day where I knew I had to get most of the things done, because then lunch came, and then when lunch comes, it's like it's the end, it's like it's game over, like you're gonna have a bioko, and you're gonna be sleeping for 3 hours, and then it's 5 p.m., and no one wants to work at 5 p.m. after you took a nap, and then it's dinner, and then it's so the whole day is gone already. And if you add to that the fact that I was never really a early bird, maybe, is that what you say? Yeah. uh, you know my productivity was just a disaster, and this keto diet, carnivore diet, not only made my productive day longer, but uh, also, yeah, make me feel more energetic. It also, I need to sleep less. I've noticed one thing. So wake up earlier in the morning, go to bed later in the day. It's all like an optimization rather than a fix, because as I said, I never really needed a fix, as didn't have a major disease or anything, but it was a neat optimization, like a clear optimization of everything. Yeah.
So how does this go for you in Japan?
Yeah, I think it's fairly easy to be carnivore in Japan because the well, as like in this particular historical period where the yen is kind of weak, I think you can get decent meat grocery without spending a fortune. Although, of course, if you're going for wagyu, which is the top, deluxe beef that we have here, it's a slightly different story. Although I would say that now I live next to the supermarket which has Australian grass fed. Maybe you're familiar with that brand. It has kind of a green label and says Aussie beef. You know that one?
Oh, no, I haven't seen that one.
I'll send you a picture of a link or anything so you can. It's not in every supermarket, but yeah. So this is another thing. When originally I thought that if you go to a Japanese supermarket, you can see the Japanese beef and then the Australian beef, and the Australian beef is less expensive. So you might be tempted to think, oh, Australian beef is lower quality, and you should buy the Japanese if you want a good cut of meat. But then when I started learning about nutrition a little bit, um, and I started learning about this difference between grass fed and grain fed, uh, you know the perspective kind of changed. And I'm sure you notice that if you take a look at Japanese steaks, it's always very it always has a very high degree of marble or marbleness, or yeah. So if I understand it correctly, that's an indication that the beef has been fed corn, as the grass fed always tends to be leaner. And so yeah, that was another plus. Okay, Australian beef less expensive and it's even grass fed. Win-win situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? People are paying double or triple the amount of money for a steak to get wagyu, and it's basically from a cow that was really unhealthy.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the thing that you realize after you learn about this stuff. And yeah, one other thing, I'm not going to comment too scientifically on this, of course, because I'm not competent. But one thing that I've noticed in my experience is that when I eat a grass-fed, grass-fed steak, um, I feel like I always eat the right amount, the amount that is right for me, and I get the sense of satiety at the right time. Whereas when I eat the very fat wagyu, I feel like I feel like fed up a bit too early, because all the amount of fat that is coming down down my neck is maybe too high. So yeah, eating the grass fat feels even more natural.
How are people around you with this? Like, do you ever go out to like restaurants and they're like, "Why are you just eating steak?"
Yeah. So yeah, that's for me. That's the most was the way to, yeah, most complicated, I would say, issue about the carnivore diet is the social aspect of it. And I I thought a great deal about how to incorporate that into my social life in general. And I think they, as a carnivore, you really have two choices. You can either stick to it, um, without diminishing, without reducing your social life in terms of quantity. Like, you can still go out every day and eat steak. My approach is the other one, which is uh, I reduce the amount of going out, restaurants. I mostly eat home, but when I eat outside, I will eat. I'm not gonna say everything, but pretty much anything. It's like the cheating cheating day. Let's say it's like a celebration. Uh, I was able to stick to the carnivore diet for 10 days, 20 days, and today I'm just gonna enjoy, I don't know, like ramen or pizza or whatever.
So if you're out with friends and they say, "Hey, let's go and grab some udon," you're gonna go, "Yeah, okay." You're not gonna say, "Oh, no, 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 we need to go to a steak restaurant."
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to be that kind of guy, to be honest. Although I know there are some people who do like that, and I don't know how well are they faring with their friends. But I don't want to be the guy that says, of course, if I go to a restaurant and I can choose between steak and I don't know, fried bread, I'm gonna go for the steak. But I don't want this for the people around me to be kind of a burden to deal with, because I've had people who had strict diets in the past, and I know that it creates a sense of awkwardness in general. And I was watching an interview to Dr. Anthony Chaffee the other day, and he was asked these same questions, and he says, like, he dismissed the entire thing, and he said, "Oh, that's not an issue at all. You just, as long as you don't draw attention to it, you just go to a restaurant and you eat what's okay for your diet. So if you go to a restaurant, you take the steak. If you go to a vegetarian, you get the eggs. And if you go to a vegan, and he says, if I go to a vegan, I just get water." And I thought, well, but that's kind of drawing attention, though, isn't it? So yeah, I don't really want to do that. To be honest, I prefer to go out less with my friends than sticking to a diet at restaurant. Yeah, I think that's the way that works for me, and works for, I believe it could work for many other people. What about yourself? What's your
I tend not to go out so much either.
okay?
I've reduced that a lot. If I do go out, like, it often I'll just have, like, no alcohol beer or something like that, just to have something there. I won't eat. If we go somewhere where I can get a steak or I can get, like, barbecue or something like that, then I'll eat, but otherwise, I'll just sit there with no alcohol beer or coffee or something.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
does he? So how about your friends and family? Are they very accepting for this?
Um, no one said, well, behind my back, I don't know. But
Right.
no one's said anything, everyone's just, and the way I kind of look at it is, if I'm going out somewhere, whether it's to dinner or whatever with a friend, I kind of look at it as, this is a social thing. Like, the main point of us going out together shouldn't be that we're eating together, because we could sit in front of the TV and eat together.
Right.
So it's the social part of it. So I just kind of look at it that way, and I think, well, I want to socialize, so yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, but I totally understand the way you look at it, especially being in Japan, because like, you in Japan, when you don't do things exactly the same way as everyone else, you really stand out much more than you do overseas, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like, they've got the saying here, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So, it's like, which is basically saying, everyone has to be the same.
yeah, 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 yeah. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna say in favor of Japan that there are many restaurants that are very carnivore friendly, and they are so, while also keeping the price kind of reasonable and affordable. There's a place, well, I'm sure you know about, for example, Torikizoku, which, for anyone who's listening, is a place where you can have uh, basically chicken, and this is 90% of the menu is chicken, and that's very, very cheap. Also, all you can eat meat restaurants. Obviously, I have no idea about the quality of the meat itself, but it's still, if I think about Italy, and And I think what would be a place where I can go with my friends and eat nothing but meat while not spending hundreds of euros. There's not many things that come to mind, to be honest. And yeah, so Japan, yeah, I would say carnivore in Japan would fare fairly well in terms of availability of food and price. I'm not
Yeah,
so sure about the social aspect, but yeah.
yeah. I'm interested to know your thoughts about this as well, especially being from Europe. Um, I think for me, one other thing that's really nice about Japan is that the anti-meat message has not broken through here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much like I saw it. Some of the burger chains, they tried doing plant-based burgers and stuff a few years ago, but that seems to have like stopped.
Yeah.
So it's like they tried it and went, no, it's not working here. We'll just continue with meat. It's fine. And so, I mean, those things are always kind of a good sign that it's not going too far to the kind of plant-based thing here.
Yeah. Well, Japan is very selective in terms of what comes in and what stays out, both in terms of well, people actually, but also ideas in general. If you extend this concept, this anti-meat, no meat concept that you mentioned, if you extend that to other things that are usually related to no meat, for example, wokeism or other stuff. Yeah, it seems that it's really landing. Well, I wouldn't say landing on deaf ears because it's not that they don't get it, but maybe they decide just not to go with the rest of the world well, I've seen a few protests here in Japan, but when you have a conversation with the average Japanese, no one's really talking about these things, and which is, well, I wouldn't say it's entirely positive because, for example, this one thing that I that I find slightly disturbing about Japan is that, yeah, sure, this no meat message is not coming through, which is a good thing in my opinion, because I believe meat would actually be helpful for the planet. But on the other hand, if you look at, for example, the plastic consumption in Japan, I'm sure you notice that it's a bit over the board, and you can argue for meat, uh, however you want, and you would actually win me over. But I don't really see how this plastic thing, this massive consumption of plastic would you know it's really something that everyone would be better off if we reduced it. And so and when I talk about plastic consumption with my Japanese friends, it's like they have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, no one really knows how, for example, everyone is convinced that you put plastic into this magic bag, and then some guy in a uniform is gonna take it the following morning, and that bag of plastic is gonna turn into a new bottle or something, which is not really how it works. And yeah, so I think there's a double-edged sword aspect, if you say that in Japan some of these environmental messages are not coming through.
Yeah, I agree. It one of the first things I noticed when I arrived in Japan 18 years ago was the love of wrapping things here.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it was something's in plastic. It needs to be put into when you buy it. It needs to be put into a small plastic bag, and then it needs to be
yeah,
put into a big plastic bag.
yeah.
And that, just for context for people watching, that has changed somewhat in recent years because they're now charging for plastic bags at checkout in supermarkets and places. However, I've noticed that there seems to be some kind of um, loophole in the law with that,
Yeah,
because when you get to the register, like let's say you buy some kind of fried chicken or something in a plastic container,
yeah,
and you get it to the register, you have to buy a plastic bag if you want a plastic bag. But because it's a food stuff in a plastic container, they'll put it into a small plastic bag before they
yeah,
give it to you. And it's like, well, why is the small plastic bag okay, but the other plastic bags are not okay? It's just like, what's the rule?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And by the way, that intermediate small plastic bag has no handles, so you
Right.
cannot use it for anything else at all. It's just something that your food gets wrapped in, and then you go home, you take the food out, and you end up with this awkward plastic plastic bag that smells like chicken, and of course you're gonna just get rid of it immediately. So it's
Right.
really like a total waste of plastic. And I believe people here really don't think about why are you do you need it. Like even if something is gonna spill out of your package, whatever it is, you're still like it's not that you're putting the meat next to your $500 Gucci Gucci bag or whatever. You're still it's still the it's still the grocery bag, right? So worst case scenario, you're gonna have some, I don't know, meat juice on your apple, but that's really the worst case scenario that I can think of. Uh,
Yeah, and actually, meat juice on an apple, that probably improves the apples, right?
yeah, man, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm interested to know, like, your father introduced you to keto and subsequently you found carnivore. How is your father doing with it?
My father is doing great, really. So yeah, as I said, he had many problems back then, which improved really really rapidly, and uh, but I would say that the most important change for him and for me subsequently is, uh, besides not just the health but also the awareness of how things work in the Western world. Like, we are now much more aware than we were in the past, that now if with all the respects in the world that I have for doctors and medical professionals, I don't mean to disrespect any of those people, but now we are much more aware that if you're going to go to a doctor, the focus is mainly going to be on, at least this is our experience, the focus is mainly going to be on the symptoms, and uh, we're going to look at your data that is coming out of the lab, and if there's some figure that we don't really like, that we're concerned about, we're going to prescribe a drug, or maybe we're gonna give. Actually, my father, for example, he went, just as an example, he went to uh, what's the doctor that looks after your bones? What's it called? The ortho
Orthopedic.
orthopedic.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went to this orthopedic because my father had massive joint pain. He couldn't sit down, couldn't crouch down on his knees, and so when they talked about it, the orthopedic told him to never go hiking again. And my father is a massive hiking passionate. He's been doing it for decades, and whenever I go back to Italy, we go hiking together and stuff. And so what my father did was completely disregarding the doctor's advice to his own risk. This is actually before he started keto, before he actually knew keto was a thing. And because his attitude was, okay, life is short, I want to hike and enjoy the mountain as much as I can before my health collapses. And but then keto was started being a thing, and he started cutting out the carbs, and his joints just improved completely, and now he's going hiking uh, pretty much every week with our dog, and he has no problems at all with his knees, and his lung capacity, his breathing has improved. So it's not just a matter of muscle, also his endurance, his breath has improved. Last time, last time I was in Italy, we actually hiked together, and we did 700 meters of going up in 70 minutes, which is 100 meters per 10 minutes, which is if you ask the average 62 years old Italian, which is my father's age now, or even the 30-year-old Italian for that matter, it's quite an accomplishment. Yeah, he's doing great. Yeah, he's maybe the downside of this thing is that now whenever we talk, we obsessively talk about diet. Like we have no other topics now. Every time we talk over the phone, we talk about the latest Anthony Cheffi video, latest Bart video. We became a bit autistic in that regard. We only talk about meat and that's it. But yeah, he's doing great. Yeah, thanks for asking.
Nice.
He's probably gonna watch this video because he's a real he's the one who got me into this carnivore YouTube community, and so he's definitely gonna be watching it.
Awesome. So have you had anyone around you here express interest in any way in what you're doing?
Yeah, not too much. And this is something that really got me thinking and surprised me because um, look, like if some like let's say that we don't know what the carnivore diet is, like we don't know its existence, and um, I've actually seen a video of yours where you talk about your health condition before the diet, so I understand it was not really shining, right? Is like was not really the best. So let's imagine that we go back to our health condition before the diet, and somebody comes along and says, "Oh, I'm doing this diet that fixed all of my health problems, and now I feel better than ever, and I feel like I came back to my 20s." Like if that was the case, I would be immediately I would really want to listen all of the story from that person. I would really want to know all the secrets and stuff, but I don't. Maybe it's me that I'm particularly curious about health and diets and stuff, but when I talk about it with other people, they just tend to shrug it off at the end of the conversation. It's like, oh, this guy's told me an interesting story, but I don't really see how that can have an impact in my life. Uh, which I find very very sad actually, because there's so many people who would need this kind of help, this kind of improvement in their life, and which is so much easy. So sorry, which is so easy because all you need to do is just put meat in a frying pan and eat it, and that's it, and that solves so many problems. So yeah, I'm not really finding the interest and the reception that I would expect if everyone behaved like I do, if everyone was as interested as I am in these health issues. Yeah, I actually work as an Italian teacher here in Japan, so my lessons are mostly conversational. So my working day is going to the office, talking about talking to dozens of students about basically our private life, and just carrying on the conversation. And you know I don't want to like convert people to carnivorism or whatever it's called, but sometimes I feel a little, I stick a few hints here and there, for example saying, oh, what did you have for breakfast today? Oh, I didn't have breakfast today, for example. Or what did you eat yesterday? Oh, I ate a steak and nothing else, for example. And people would react like they're concerned, like, oh, no salad, are you okay? And they don't really get it. They think like I am running some kind of risk. They don't understand that the person in front of them is very healthy, very happy, very free of any constraints, and they're the ones who are sick. And but I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. So my passion in giving them advice can only reach a certain point. Beyond that, it would be a bit too much. I don't want to take too much responsibility.
Yeah. So if someone did show interest and they said, "Okay, I'm willing to give it 90 days,"
Mhm.
what advice would you give them to get started?
Yeah, good question. I would say start slow. I think I imagine that if you transition to a completely different diet overnight, it might be too much for your body, but also for your psychology. Because you know, I believe that if you want to do something, you have to have a very comfortable relationship with your expectations. So I would say start slow. That would be my recommendation. If you're talking about uh, carnivore specifically, I would say choose the meat that you prefer. I wouldn't say, oh, just go beef, grass fed. Maybe go start with the meat that you're most comfortable with. Uh, if it's lean cut, maybe add some fat to balance. If it's a fat cut, just eat that. And yeah, a few eggs, a little bit of cheese. Make it like you want to actually eat the thing, and see how it leads you. Because I believe that the key for a successful diet is that it should come out very natural. Like if you're making an effort, that's already a failure. That's how I look at it. Now I know that for some people, carnivore is actually an effort at the beginning because they are dealing with the carnivore, sorry, with the carbohydrates addiction and carbohydrate. What's the word when you stop something you're addicted to is
Withdrawal.
withdrawal. Yeah, exactly. So I know that for some people it can be hard, but leaving these things aside, um, once you get there, it should be something that you're looking forward to every day. Like I actually look forward to eat meat every single day. My mother is concerned and say, is it not tired? Is it not tiring for you? Is it not boring? It's actually not. When I eat my meal, which is one meal a day, I eat a lot of meat, a lot of eggs, and by the time that I get to the last forkful or spoonful, I feel like I don't want to eat at all for another 1,000 years because I'm so full. But then the following day, meat comes back being this delicious thing that I want to eat every single day. I mean, maybe you have the same experience. I've seen actually a video where you cook your food, and it's
Yeah.
double that I eat, and
Right.
I think I eat a lot. So you must have the maybe double the feeling that I have.
Yeah, but it is a bit like that. You get to the end and it's like, oh, how am I gonna finish this? But then
Yeah,
the next day, when you're cooking it and the anticipation's building, it's like, this is gonna be the best meal I've ever eaten in my life.
yeah. Same feeling, same feeling, same feeling. It's terrible when you finish it, but the following days you just go back to it. It's like going back to a game that you are gonna play for the first time. Like it's like forgetting something to do it for the first time every day, and it's great. I think it's the strength of the carnivore diet, which is it's really hard to grow tired of it, and that's in my view that's the sign of the fact that that's actually the diet that we have been consuming as a species for so long because
I agree, right? Because it's the same with every other species out there, right? They don't go, oh, uh, monkey again, a gazelle again,
yeah,
fish again. They just eat it, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If it should be effortless. Yeah, it really should be effortless. Yeah, absolutely.
I think, yeah, putting it that way is it's a really good way of framing it. It should be, if it's effortless, then that's a sign that you're probably doing the right thing.
Exactly,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, is there a way we can reach out to you, Bart? Do you have any social media or Facebook or YouTube or anything?
Yes, I have Facebook. I don't have YouTube yet. Maybe in the future I'll do some things. Actually, my main passion is painting miniatures, and I always dream every day to put my painting videos on the YouTube someday. But for now, let's stick to just Facebook and Instagram.
No worries. Well, I'll link to those below. But thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. My pleasure, Dave. Thanks for having me.